The boar's head in hand bear we, bedecked with bays and rosemary, and I pray you, my masters, be merry, podestis in convivio. Welcome to Bracebridge Hall. I am a traveling minstrel here at the pleasure of the court. Or I am a naturalist and historic guide here with Delaware North at Yosemite. My name is Cara Stella, and welcome. I am not only a guide with Delaware North, but I'm one of the park's winter sign language interpreters. So I wear a few hats while I'm here. I'm absolutely delighted to have you be here with me. We have 45 minutes to explore the intricacies of the Bracebridge dinner and look at the expression of love and joy and play and mirth and camaraderie that comes out of this experience. It is really a place where the best of nature and the best of ourselves as human beings come together in celebration in the Bracebridge dinner. So how many of you are going to the dinner tonight? Let me ask it this way. Who has no idea what we're talking about and had to come to see what all the fuss is about? Okay, good. Then you all get to be on the team that gets to experience Bracebridge together. And how many of you have been coming for more than 1 year? How many years have you been coming to Bracebridge? What number? 4. Anybody beat that? Excellent. You win the prize. Oh, well, okay. Cheater over here in the corner. We'll get to him in a minute. Uh-huh. You look good, though. You look good. Dinners, that is. Okay, that makes more sense. Excellent. And what is it for you that calls you to this event, either for your first time or as a returnee? What is it about the Bracebridge that makes you want to come? It's a bucket list thing. And why?
For me, it's the essence of Christmas. You've got nature, you've got spirituality, which goes with nature.
Yeah.
The music is fantastic. It is just there's nothing else like it.
Nature, spirituality, singing. I will pay you later. You're leading into my talk. Thank you. Appreciate that. Tradition, yes.
We're bringing my 95-year-old mother-in-law.
95-year-old mother-in-law gets to come. Wonderful. Anything else? Is it a bucket list item? Indeed. So for those of you that are first-time visitors to Bracebridge Hall, I'll give you a little bit of a taste of what it is all about. And before I do, does anyone want to try to describe it? You put it into one sentence? Impossible.
It's the essence of Christmas.
Yeah, it's just the essence of Christmas. That's awesome. Yes?
A unique event in a unique hotel in a unique place.
A unique event in a unique hotel in a unique place. It is a 4-hour, 7-course, fully costumed for the cast, formal attired for the guest, musical, dancing, comedic, dinner theater pageant. It is an experience unlike one that you will have. It's the longest running Christmas pageant in a hotel in the country, maybe in the world, we're not sure. And so a little bit of the who, what, when, where, why. The who, you're in the hall of Squire Bracebridge. You are visiting guests of the family, the Bracebridge family. The where is Bracebridge Hall in the dining room of the Ahwahnee Hotel. And it is a manor out in England. The when is a little iffy, and we'll talk about why it is iffy, but you could say 18th century England. It has absolutely, in my opinion, spectacular costuming. So the work, the detail of the beads and the exquisite embroidery and the jewelry is really worth seeing. If you get a chance to be near one of the costumes and can look up close, it's really wonderful. The music, if you're a music lover, we have any music lovers out there? Oh. So I sing quietly to myself in the back of the room when I get to go because there are songs, many of them that you know and that you love, that are traditional Christmas tunes. So all of that gives you the big picture of what Bracebridge is all about. And to understand Bracebridge, you need to get into the story of it. And that story will take you through a trip through time. So we're going to go back not only to the start of the hotel, 1927, which was the first Bracebridge dinner, to the early 1800s and the Transcendentalism movement and how that links to this event. We're going to go back to early Christianity and back thousands of years before that to early solstice traditions that feed into what we know and love about Bracebridge today. And through all of that, we're going to go wide, we're going to go broad, and it's all going to come together for you to see the best of us as people in this event and the best of nature in this place as well. So if we go back in time, if you go back to pre-Christmas, certainly when we say Christmas today, we're celebrating the birth of Christ, but those traditions go way back. And many of those traditions have been carried on for thousands of years. So for you, what is a Christmas tradition or Christmas traditions that are necessary to have Christmas feel like Christmas for you today? Christmas tree, absolutely. What are other traditions in your family? What's that? Carols, 100%. For musical nerds like us, yes. What else?
A little snow.
Okay, little snow is good. That's love or hate, depending. What else is part of your Christmas traditions?
Feasting.
Family dinner.
Family dinner, the feast, absolutely.
Giving gifts.
Gifting, definitely. Connection, community, coming together, your people coming together in one place. Decorations, greenery, absolutely. All of these things have been handed down by ancient peoples who were celebrating right at this time of year. For them, they were celebrating rebirth, but not the rebirth of Christ, pre-Christ. They were celebrating the rebirth of nature, the turning of the seasons, the shortest and darkest day of the year, solstice. They were celebrating the coming back of nature, of the crop in the spring. So that darkness as a reminder that we're going to come back around to all of the richness of the summer. It's amazing to me to imagine that many of those traditions of family and gifting and gathering, song, feasting, celebration, they have been brought through the ages to us today, and we're still celebrating them. And it makes me feel connected to those people in the past. So if you move forward in time, it was about the 4th century that the date of December 25th was selected by the church. And it was selected, no one was sure what day it really was that they should celebrate. That was long gone in the annals of history. But the date was a good one because of those pre-Christian traditions that were happening right around that time. And so Christmas could just envelop those and have those celebrations be part of what we know as Christmas today as a Christian tradition. But that was not always well received. In fact, does the war on Christmas mean anything to anyone? Today we struggle with what is Christmas? What are we celebrating? Is it a Christian tradition? Is it not? That fight has been going on forever. It came to a head in the 1600s. Believe it or not, but there was a group of Puritans, both in America and in England, that were so tired of the partying that was going on, that was not pious, that they banned Christmas. Eventually, Christmas did get reinstated. But by the end of the American Revolution, everything that was English was passé, don't want to do it, and Christmas really kind of died out here in America. Now, fast forward to the early 1800s. It seems like we're going to go far afield here for a minute, but we're going to come back. In that time was the birth of the Transcendentalism movement. Now, Transcendentalism, the leader of that, does anyone know? Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Emerson at that time was looking at the social inequities of the time in the 1800s, and he was saying we need to have the connection and community of the past. The Transcendentalism movement was about the sacredness in all humans, the equality of all humans, and the sacredness and equality of nature right along with us. That broke out into many social and political movements of the day. It broke out into the influence of our local hero, John Muir, who helped us create Yosemite National Park in 1890. We'll be celebrating the 125th just next year. John Muir was influenced by those early transcendentalists. The National Park movement was influenced by the transcendentalists. Now go back to 1819. There was a transcendentalist writer. His name was Washington Irving. Does anyone know that name? What else did he write? Yes, so The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. And he is there mourning social inequity, the fact that we're disconnected from nature. And he's saying, how do I express that to people in a way that calls them? Well, he writes a collection of short stories. There they are, upside down. And one of the short stories that he writes in 1819 is Christmas at Bracebridge Hall. Aha! It's starting to make sense now. So in this story, there is this amazing energy of these old nature traditions and of the warmth and love and play and laughter that was part of that time that he feels like is missing in our culture. So the story is set in the 1800s. And it's a man that goes out to what is today based on a manor, Aston Hall, but he goes out to Bracebridge Manor. And they are having an old English celebration with all of the love and the food and the play that was something you would see in the 1700s. In that play, there is a jester that calls for a masquerade. And people run upstairs and they collect clothing from their grandparents and great-grandparents and they put it on and they have a parade and a multi-course feast. Any of that sound familiar to anyone? In that story, there are a number of characters that are going to come back to us, that are from those early days. So not long after, a few decades after Washington Irving writes his book, a man you may know, Charles Dickens, writes another Christmas story. A Christmas Carol, right? There are a number of writers in the day. And at that time, A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens, another transcendentalist. He is a person that's calling on these ancient traditions, nature traditions, and the warmth and love and community of those times, the social equality of those times, to write another story that's along these lines. They were social activists through their writing. And these stories begin to rebirth Christmas in America. People begin to love it. People begin to celebrate it again. Fast forward again. It's 1926. The Ahwahnee Hotel is being developed. And the head of the board of concessions that's managing the development of the hotel, Donald Tressiter, and his wife, Mary Tressiter, are thinking, we're going to have this great hotel, and in the wintertime, nobody's going to come because it's remote, because people don't come to the parks back in that day. How do we get people to come in the wintertime? Now, in 1926 was the first time you could get to Yosemite National Park in the wintertime. They built a brand new road. They had a big celebration for the opening of the road in 1926, the Diamond Jubilee. It was also the cornerstone laying of the Ahwahnee Hotel. And they had a big pageant in the Diamond Jubilee. Now, the person that wrote the pageant is a title that the Park Service no longer carries, I am afraid to say. In these budget times, what can you do? It was National Park Service Pageant Master. Doesn't that sound like a great job? Why don't we have that job anymore? Garnet Holm was the pageant master, and he had written this extravagant pageant for Yosemite for the opening of the road and the hotel. And so Donald Tressiter goes to Garnet Holm and says, Garnet Holm, you are the man to write us a Christmas pageant for the hotel for 1927, for the first year. And so Garnet Holm says, okay, I want to bring people to Yosemite. What can I create? What can I do that calls nature and family and tradition and joy and play and mirth? And he goes back to Washington Irving's Christmas at Bracebridge Hall. He says, I will base the pageant on that because it calls to mind all of the best of nature and humanity in one place. So he writes a pageant. And that first year, the squire is none other than Donald Tressiter and his wife, Mary Curry Tressiter. Here they are in 1927. Yeah, so it's interesting. But you know, the story, as I said, is of a pageant of people dressed up in their grandparents' and great-grandparents' clothes, so we don't have an exact time on our story for what we're representing. Here's the whole of the table that first year. Now, at that year, there wasn't much to say of a storyline. There was a great multi-course meal. Garnet Holm was the director that first year. And the jester of that first year was a local guy. He was a musician, actually. That was his first love. And he wanted to be a professional pianist, but he failed in that regard and had to fall back on his second interest, which was photography. Who was that? Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams, a self-proclaimed hyperactive, the jester of 1927, climbed the top of the stone columns in the dining room just to be wild and crazy. A wild and crazy guy. During a performance. Indeed. So some of the characters that you'd find back then have come forward with us. Tonight you'll see some of those characters. We'll get to the jester. There is a squire, of course, the head of the household. He was the magistrate for the local area, kind of like the king in a castle, that idea. There is a housekeeper tonight who makes sure everything is running well, carries the keys of the house. There's a parson. The parson is your minister. He's the one that is reminding people that Christmas is about Christ and not about all those pagan partying rituals that we like to include in there. So he's got his perspective. There is the jester. The jester is a wonderful character. If you've seen the show before, you know the jester well. In fact, I would expect every single one of you has one in your house. I'm not talking about your teenage kids either. What am I talking about? Does anybody have a deck of cards at home? And the Joker, right? The Joker is the wild card. Literally, he is the wild card tonight. Keep your eye on him, even when he's not on stage. He'll be causing trouble and amusing you. That is his task. There is a cook. And the cook takes care, of course, of everyone with the food, looking to please them. The cook makes a number of dishes, and the dishes tonight, all 7 courses, go back to traditional foods that have been eaten for centuries in England, but also in America. Some examples of that: there is a fish dish. Now that fish dish, the fish, does anyone know what it represents in the early days of Christianity? It was a symbol for the Christians themselves. And when Christians were oppressed, it was a way in the sand you could draw the shape of a fish. And if someone drew the shape of a fish, you would know that they were a Christian too. They wouldn't oppress you, that they were safe and they were family to you. There is a boar's head. And there is an old Norse god Freyr that had a sidekick of a boar. And so they were celebrating those old Norse traditions by serving a boar's head. There is a plum pudding. The plum pudding being a long-standing tradition going back in England, and all sorts of fun things in the early days were put into the plum pudding. So you might be eating your plum pudding and come out with a ring, and it would mean what for your coming year? You were going to get married, lucky you. You could pull out a button. Any guesses? Bachelorhood for the men for the coming year. A thimble. Spinsterhood for the women. A coin. Wealth to come to you. Now, I will say tonight, if you get anything in your plum pudding that's not food, please tell your waiters that's not on the menu tonight. But that tradition of plum pudding, the whole family would come together. Plum pudding was cooked for weeks in a huge, huge pot. And the family would come around that pot. There was a large wooden spoon, and everyone in the household would get a turn to hold the spoon and close their eyes and make a wish. So you can make a wish on your plum pudding tonight for what it is that you wish for the coming year. And the wassail. The wassail is the drink. That wassail drink and the songs that go with it go back to the pagans, hoping for a good harvest of their trees. And they would go out and sing around the trees, songs that turned into carols, songs that, as they sprinkled their wassail around the trees, would wish for a good harvest, particularly for their apples. So all of these foods have a story to tell about these traditions that we have been passing down of joy and happiness. Now, if you go forward in time a little bit more to 1929, 2 years later, unfortunately, Garnet Holm, our hero, who was the director that wrote the play, unexpectedly passes away. And our jester says, I might know a little bit about music. I can take over this, I think. Ansel Adams takes over in 1929 and continues to be the director for 45 years. Now move forward, 1973. Ansel Adams retires, and Eugene Fulton, who had been part of the musical part of the Bracebridge dinner for years, takes over as director. And he stays as director, bringing in his family, including his daughter, Andrea Fulton, as he directs the play. 1978, again, there she is, an unfortunate happenstance happens, and that is Eugene Fulton, the night before the first presentation, has a heart attack and passes away. And Andrea, she ends up taking over, rewriting in the absence of him being there, and having the show go on. She becomes the director and is the director to this day. So she started her first year in Bracebridge at 5 years old and still takes care of this long-standing tradition of family, of community that has been passed down for generations. So we've gotten all the way up to today, and I am honored to have an actual cast member, the woodsman, Bill Pickersgill, here to share with you his stories, to tell you tales of modern-day Bracebridge and answer your questions. It's an honor to have you here, please.
I've been sitting on my knife, sorry. Adjustment. No problem. Yes, my name is Bill Pickersgill. I play Nathaniel, the woodsman, in the Bracebridge dinner. Nathaniel is a character that was invented probably 8 or 10 years ago. And as I listen, he's probably the last transcendentalist of the dinners. He brings nature into the hall, reminds people they're having this, opulent, elegant feast. And he reminds them of nature, to listen to the trees. Some of it's a little bit out there, but he reminds people that there's a whole world out there, and we're surrounded by this amazing, nature with trees and, of course, Half Dome and all that beautiful stuff. Anyway, I've been with the company for 27 years. I started in 1985, and the dinners were very different then. We started out, when I started, we did 5 dinners. We did 2 doubles and a single. And the doubles were grueling, if you can imagine, used to sit through a Bracebridge dinner. They're longer now, but they were about 3 hours then. And we would do one dinner from about 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and then we'd turn right around, we'd eat, and then we'd do another one until about midnight. Anyway, it was just killer. Anyway, the dinners then had, when I started, it still had a lot of what Eugene Fulton and Ansel Adams had invented. And it was usually like 8 guys or 10 guys that would come up and stay drunk during their time up here, and they would march and process and introduce each dish. And when Andrea Fulton took over, she started to integrate more women, and basically brought them into the processions. We've expanded the music. we've expanded the characters. Many characters have been invented, like Nathaniel the Woodsman. And she's expanded, and also she went to see, a performance at Teatro Cinzani in San Francisco. And that kind of blew her mind. And she wanted to create a dinner where there was something going on at almost every moment. You couldn't see it all. If you'd have to go to several dinners to try to see everything. So the dinners now are, everything dovetails together, and you'll barely have time to eat, but whatever. And it's very, very interesting the way the dinners have changed. And so a little bit by myself. I'm with San Francisco Opera. That's my other job. I've been with San Francisco Opera for 20 years. I'm not a speaker. I'm called a singer. And I've been with them for, like I said, like over 20 years. And it dovetails perfectly with Bracebridge. I end my season in December, and then we come up here and do the Bracebridge dinners. And I love to hear people talk about or describe the dinners, because you really can't describe it in one sentence. It's almost indescribable. I just tell you, you have to come. You have to come to the dinners and see it for yourself. It's really, really a magical experience. Anyway, are there any questions or? Yes?
You've been doing this for 27 years. That's a lot of performances, because they have many performances each year.
That's right.
Sounds like you never have time to have your own family.
Well, actually, my daughter is standing over there. That's Allie. And my son-in-law, Christian, is standing right there. Allie grew up at Bracebridge. And, I bring him along. She's sang in the choir for 12 years now, probably. Yeah, I've been part of the dinner. You've probably done 40 dinners yourself.
100 and...
No, what?
How many dinners have I done?
Yeah, how many dinners have you done?
Well, since I was born, so over 100.
Oh, I see, okay. Anyway, yeah, so and it's a family affair for a lot of people. We bring our families up. They put us up at the lodge. They feed us. We also do, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, but we do 4 concerts in the Great Lounge. 2 of them are a cabaret concert, and 2 of them are a Christmas concert. And we feel the need to actually get it out there now, because some people will wander into the concert and then not know that it's also connected to the Bracebridge dinner. It's the same performers, and it gives other people in the cast a chance to really strut their stuff. And there's a lot of depth and a lot of variety in this cast. Anyway.
And it's lovely.
Yeah, thank you. More questions?
A quiet group. Okay.
Anyway,
Well, I will just conclude by saying the people that have been part of this cast, many of them have been for decades coming back and being part of a tradition that is so meaningful for them that it calls them to return year after year. So there are guests that come, but oh my gosh, the traditions that are woven into the cast themselves that carry on this tradition of celebration during Christmas is pretty inspiring. So if you think about all of those qualities that the Transcendentalists were calling forth, that are pulling back from ancient generations, of the hope and the positivity and the sharing and community and connection and laughter and play, those are represented in one night. It's the best of who we are as human beings, and it weaves together our love and our spiritual connection with that which is outside, so that the love and the joy of the natural environment, that gets brought into the inside of this place and shared amongst us all. That Transcendentalist movement that called those characters, that built out the National Park Service, that called the National Park Service into being, is here and all around us. And as we look towards next year and celebrating 125 years of Yosemite National Park, as we stand in a place whose mission is to preserve and protect natural processes and provide for their enjoyment in such a way as will leave it unimpaired, we are here in the embodiment of the meaning behind both the National Park Service and Christmas as a whole. May you embody that in your family traditions this Christmas and beyond. What a pleasure to spend our time with you. Have a great evening tonight. Thanks for joining us.